Hello everyone, this is Pras from the FPL Wire and welcome back to my team selection video for Gameweek 8. LR and I podded just yesterday, so to timestamp this is a Wednesday night. But I thought, between now and press conferences, we're not going to learn a lot more. Everybody's on their way back. So I thought I'll get it done on a Wednesday night. My thoughts haven't changed too much from what I discussed on the pod, but let me talk about it a little bit more detail. Today I'll look at the fixtures like I promised between now and Game Week 11, then a little bit long-term plan as well with you guys from Game Week 12 onwards. And of course, we'll look at my Game Week's 8 team selection and what am I thinking in terms of various scenarios. So let's dive right into it. It's been 84 years, so I'm not going to be talking about this too much, but I think it was a decent week. I think I halved my rank after doubling my rank in Game Week 7, or in Game Week 6 rather. So yeah, it was actually fairly decent. The Arsenal guys did all right, and the clean sheet loss didn't really hurt me because I don't have Raya, although Edison didn't do much either. So I think in the next 3 games or 4 games is when I hope that going Edison over Raya will work out with the clean sheet odds that you will see. But you never know. It's never easy to back against Arsenal. But I think if there is a time, the next 4 fixtures are there to back against them slightly. So apart from that, Mbumo goal, Havertz goal, and that's about it. But that was good enough to see a healthy green arrow. And the team looks in good shape. I carried another free transfer. So now I go into Game Week 8 with 3 free transfers. And there are scenarios in which I will use all 3. So I will talk about those. So as I promised, let's look at a little bit of breakdown between what happens between now and Game Week 11 and then Game Week 12 and beyond, which will be on the next slide. So we're in this little period where if you're not on a wildcard, then you need to be thinking longer term. So you may be, even though there's some attractive teams with some attractive fixtures, you may want to give some of that upside, short-term upside, for longer term gains. So I certainly fall into that category. The top teams here in the next 4 weeks are basically Everton. So if you have DCL, I wouldn't sell. Next 4 are pretty good. If you have Chris Wood, I wouldn't sell either. I think both of them are good picks. If you have both, that's also okay. Spurs, I think, are a team that a lot of people are targeting now. You have West Ham home, Aston Villa home, Ipswich home. If you guys will remember, Aston Villa home is typically a good game for players like Son because there is space behind the high line. Although you remember that hat-trick of offsides that he got last season, I think that was. So it's a good game for them. And I think so similar things apply to Brennan Johnson. I think other games in which teams sit back a little bit, maybe that's West Ham and Crystal Palace. Maybe those are better for a Solanke versus a Son or a Johnson. But I think Villa and Ipswich probably are better for the other two. So regardless, I think their attacking players should be in demand. Even defensive players, I don't think these are bad defensive fixtures, but I certainly like the attack more than the defense. And then Leicester and Fulham, nothing much more to say. I think if you have them, fine. Fulham, a lot of people are looking at Robinson. I saw Anderson dropped to 4.3, which is ridiculous. I think good price, good pickup. We are now starting to see real cheap gems like Mikolenko, 8 Nouri at 4.4. Anderson at 4.3, even I think Moreno from Forest is 4.4. So there are some cheap options for people going really basement price. And then Man City, I think that's a very short term, not very short term, but it's a play that you can go and attack the short term. And that's where I would draw the line. Like Brentford are good beyond that as well. Man United not touching, Crystal Palace not really touching. So like I said, I think short term there are opportunities if you wanted to back against. Now you see at the bottom of here, third from bottom is Chelsea, fourth from bottom is Arsenal, sixth from bottom is Liverpool. So if you had a wildcard in hand, Game Week 12, you could look to basically punt away from a Saka, a Arsenal defense, and get them back in Game Week 12. But if you don't have that wildcard and if you want to set up yourself for longer term, you don't have a lot of free luxury transfers, then I think a lot of people will just say, look, I'm going to hold. And some of these fixtures are okay fixtures even for an Arsenal. Like Bournemouth away is fine. Newcastle away is not too bad. Chelsea away is not too bad. Liverpool home, it's a home game. So you can make a case for either. And then Chelsea again, after Liverpool, they have Newcastle at home, which you would argue is a good fixture. Man United away, I would still say is a decent fixture. And then Arsenal at home is still a home game. So you can make a case either way for these teams. But I would just say there is opportunities for people if they wanted to, let's say instead of going for a Saka or a Palmer, they wanted to go for a Son or a Foden. They are short-term plays. So then talking of longer term, like I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, and this is very much in my thinking on what happens after game week 12. Because this fixture ticker that I've shown now goes from game week 12 to game week 20. Why such a long period? Because this is basically taking us to the winter break. So it takes us through what I always call as the big boy period, or the big FPL manager period, the engaged FPL manager period. Because game week 16 to 20, in those 5 game weeks, they all happen between, December 16th to January 4th. You see those bars going through. So a lot of these games happen in midweeks. So, your minutes monsters really come through. And look who's top two, Chelsea and Arsenal. So I think game week 12 and beyond, having Saka and Palmer is not going to be an edge. Everybody will have them. So if you want to go different, of course, instead of Saka, you can go Havertz. But I think Palmer, there is really no alternative. So by game week 12, no matter what kind of tinkering you're doing, if you're not in a wildcard, you have to land in a scenario that by game week 12, you're on triple Arsenal and Palmer. And that should be guiding transfers from now to how do you get there. Now, in my case, for example, I might sell an Arsenal this week, but I definitely plan to get a third Arsenal by then. I'm not planning to get Palmer this week, but I am planning to get Palmer between now and then. So it's things like this that people need to have at the back of their mind, because long term, if you get a Palmer and a triple Arsenal, and these triple Arsenals, I'm talking about the nailed ones, right? I mean, not Trossards and Martinellis or Timbers or Calafioris. I'm talking about the big nailed guys, the Rayas, the Gabriel, Saliba, Saka, Havertz, these guys. Then at least in those 4 slots, injury permitting, you're fine over this Christmas period, because these are big guys for the teams that have the best fixtures. Number 3, Bournemouth is very interesting. So a lot of people have Semenyo like myself, and I don't want to lose that slot, because I know that I can play Rodgers for the foreseeable, maybe the next 2-3 games, and then Bournemouth are up there. I mean, that team is very, very good. These fixtures are incredible, and he's even benchable. Like, if you don't want to play him in any of them, although there's not a fixture here that I think you need to bench Semenyo for, but still, it's good to have a healthy squad over this period. It's good to have that 7th or 8th attacker that has amazing fixtures through this period. Bournemouth he's not rotation proof, but I would say he's pretty much first team. So you should get good minutes out of him. Some very good home games here, but even the away games are not too bad. So for this reason, I do plan to keep Semenyo. And then you see here Wolves and Brighton, 2 very interesting teams with some cheap players. And, a lot of people are going for Ait Nouri. I think even going for a Brighton defender at some point, no matter how bad they look, I think the time is coming. People might look at them. People might look at Mitoma by this time. Definitely Cunha or João Pedro if he's fit, or even Welbeck if João Pedro is not fit. I think these are picks that will become popular by game week 12. So think about if you're going for a 3 expensive striker structure, like a Haaland, Havertz, Solanke, you might want to be downgrading one of those by this time. And if you're going for Havertz, then keep Havertz, because you don't want to be scrambling Havertz to a second Arsenal player that is not Havertz, or third Arsenal player that is not Havertz by this time. And then even Villa, I think short term by game week 12, of course Rodgers is good, but then some people might be thinking of Haaland out to a Watkins. And look at that. I mean, Crystal Palace home, Brentford home, Southampton home, Forest away. After that, not so good, but then after that, he actually dovetails very well with Isak. So you could basically think about a Watkins to Isak kind of structure, or something else. There are lots of good cheap strikers or good mid-priced strikers. I think if I go further down on this list, Liverpool become a little bit interesting. Liverpool and Man City, they have got okay fixtures, but we're entering, like I said, the minutes monster period. So I think from Liverpool, I will be trusting no one other than Van Dijk, Trent, or Salah. I may change my view if there's an injury, but those are the people that you should be looking at this phase. Not really the Diaz's, maybe the Jotas, but again, it's not worth it. Like, there's other good picks. And then Man City. I think from Man City, pretty much it's only Haaland, who I would trust to start regularly over this period, and Edison. So maybe Guardiola, you can make a case. But I can see a lot of people trimming down to 1 or even 0 Man City in this period, because that's how Pep has taught us, that during this period, it's not very easy to predict their team, especially when there's midweek Premier League games as well. So Man City might become slightly less popular. And then Spurs is an interesting one. Spurs is, in the bottom half here. But actually, if you look at the fixtures, like, I plan to bench a Solanke if I have him by then, away to Man City. But after that, they're pretty good fixtures. Like even at the home games, look at that: Fulham at home, Chelsea home, Liverpool home, Wolves home, Newcastle home. Now you can say Chelsea, Liverpool, Newcastle home, not easy. Chelsea, is okay. But then away games are also interesting. Southampton, Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth. I'm on the fence whether I will keep my Spurs guys longer term or not. Because now that I read it, Nottingham Forest away is not the easiest. Bournemouth away is not the easiest. So we'll see what happens to Solanke. Maybe we get to a structure where we have two cheap strikers like a Cunha and a João Pedro, and then we get Trent back. But I'll actually make a wildcard draft in the next video next week, just to see how Gameweek 12 would look like if I was to do it. But like I said, I would definitely have Palmer, triple Arsenal in there, and then I would build the team around that. So that's on long-term fixture planning. So everything that we do, we shouldn't veer too much away from it. But let's come back home. Let's come back to Game Week 8. So Game Week 8, Man City have the best fixture, and the markets also agree. This is from Rob T, by the way. We have it in every single video, but I do want to shout him out when we do that. So Man City, if you have their double, so a defender and an attacker like Haaland, I think you're in a good spot this week. I think Haaland is the clear captaincy choice. If you look at it here from projected goals, who is competing with him? Maybe a Spurs player, but I'm not captaining Solanke over or Johnson over Haaland. Then you get to Liverpool. Liverpool are second highest. So the markets predict a Liverpool win. Liverpool are 2.2, Chelsea are 1.3. So basically, it's roughly a 2-1 win for Liverpool is what the markets are predicting. Of course, you can be wrong. Markets can be wrong. But that's where we are. So if you have a 2-goal ceiling or a 2-goal prediction for Liverpool, I'm not really feeling Salah, despite the fact that... And markets know, right, that Cucurella is injured and Fofana is injured. So you can try to beat it, but we have to go with what the popular people who are pricing these things are thinking of. And so for me, that basically makes a clear case for Haaland. And then next in line is Man United, Arsenal, Newcastle. So if you have your Arsenal picks, that's fine. It's under 2 expected goals, which is okay. But this for me basically means that if there's an opportunity, if I can go for a Havertz to Solanke, tells me probably makes sense to do that. So I'll obviously come to my transfer plans, but that's the thinking. In terms of clean sheet odds, Arsenal, even though it's a Bournemouth away, and you can argue it's not the easiest away game, but they're still the second highest. So if you're holding double Arsenal defense, nothing wrong with it. If you're holding 1 or 2 Man City defenders like I am, I'm happy with that. So that's what you get. In terms of the cheap guys, there's been a lot of talk of finding a cheap defender this week. I mean, Nottingham Forest are the highest, but 31% is not that inspiring. They're the same as Spurs. So if you're looking at somebody who you want to play this week, I think you can go for one of these guys, a Van de Ven, a Mikolenko, something like that. And then after that, it's just dire. Like, then go for a defender with attacking threat. Like, I can see people with Leif Davis, nothing wrong with that. Even Liverpool, they're at 27%. But if you have a Trent, I'm happy with that. I think Trent will still have the highest expected points between all defenders. And so I think he's very playable. And yeah, like Everton, not very high. Brentford, not very high. So I'm looking at some of the popular defenders. That's where we are. And Wolves, obviously, right at the bottom. So we come to my team. I've got Edison in goal. I still have Edison in goal. Plan is to move him on to Raya. Like I showed you guys from Gameweek 12, I want to have triple Arsenal. My triple Arsenal most likely will be Gabriel, Raya and Saka. And I'm making plans to get a Palmer in place. I might do that as soon as this week if Saka's out. And I might do that next week if I make space from Trent. But I will talk about some of these scenarios when I'll come to the next slide. But let me just read out the full team. So Edison, Rico Lewis, Trent and Gabriel. And then in midfield, Diaz, Saka, Rogers, Bumo. And then in attack, Captain Haaland, Havertz and DCL. So I'm benching Semenyo, who's home to Arsenal, for Rogers, which feels okay. Although Fulham have been good themselves, but I just feel back the guy who's not playing the best. So he is ahead of Nick in my subs bench. And so the thinking here is that Diaz played last night. It's been 24 hours. He didn't have the very late game, the Colombia game. It was basically 9:45 p.m. kickoff last night. So that's a Tuesday. He probably travels today. He got there. So he's got Thursday, he's got Friday, he's got Saturday. The game's on Sunday. And I think it's an important enough game that if we do believe he's first choice, I believe he starts. So I will obviously be looking out for press conference quotes. And if there's anything in, that slot gives away, I don't think he will. If he gives anything, then he's a transfer out. But otherwise, I'm inclined to keep him. Next week, he will become Palmer. because Palmer's then played his Liverpool away game. Newcastle at home feels like an okay entry point. Now, I'm not expecting hat-tricks, Newcastle at home and Man United away and Arsenal at home, but I feel he'll trickle along, and because I want him from Game Week 12 onwards, it may be a decent entry point. And Trent also, like, it feels like this week I can give like, if I was to do the Trent down to 8 Nouri move, which is my plan next week, then I have to play Greaves this week. So it feels like next week is a good entry point to get 8 Nouri, because I've got, Pinnock, who has a very good fixture I can play next week, and I can even bench 8 Nouri if I need to. I can if Lewis is ever benched. So that's the thinking. And so the only transfer that I'm planning to make is basically Havertz to Solanke. I could even not do that. Like, I don't have to do Havertz to Solanke. But when I look at these goal-scoring odds, and right now we don't have the player odds, but I definitely feel, when we get the Rob T, we should get them by Thursday. When we get the player percentage odds for goal, I feel Solanke will be well ahead of Havertz. Even though Havertz is a good pick, I think Havertz can match Solanke, even beat Solanke this week. I'm taking a punt on basically the point that Havertz after Bournemouth at home. So compare fixture to fixture, right? Let's actually come here and look at it. If I look at Havertz this week, let's say you believe that Bournemouth away is a good fixture, fine, but then I think there's no doubt the markets agree that West Ham at home is better for Solanke. After this, Solanke plays Crystal Palace away and Arsenal play Liverpool at home. I think that's similar. Like, Liverpool at home is still tough, and Crystal Palace away, they're actually looking fairly poor. It's an away game. So let me give that as a draw. Then you have Tottenham with Aston Villa at home and Ipswich at home, whereas Arsenal are away to Newcastle and away to Chelsea. So on balance, I feel Spurs score more goals here in the next 4. And anyway, by Game Week 12, I need to free up my third Arsenal slot. So it's not like if Havertz is doing well, I will change my mind. My mind up is made up. I will get a second Arsenal defender. Whether that's Saliba, whether that's Raya, I will see. Most likely it's going to be Raya. But at the moment, I need to release that slot. So therefore, it just makes sense for me to go this week when Solanke has higher expected points than Havertz. So that's why the main transfer that I'm looking at this week is Havertz to Solanke. But let me talk about a few scenarios. This should say Game Week 8. So likely scenario, like I said, if Saka is okay, and I think Saka is okay, that's why this is a likely scenario, or there is no news, right? We all know what Arteta is going to say. Yeah, he's not trained. We'll see, there will be no training pictures. I classify that as no news, that they are not confirmed in the know that Saka is out. Because if Saka is sort of not in the training and Arteta's quiet, I'll keep him. It's not a problem. Like, if he's completely out and I misjudged it, then Semenyo will come on. It's not the end of the world. So then I will do what I've just talked about, which is Havertz to Solanke. In the unlikely scenarios, there's 3 unlikely scenarios I've shared here. So let's say some journalist, again, Arteta will not do this, but some journalist says that Saka is out. They're trying to save him for the Champions League and tougher games ahead, and so he misses out. And we find that out. If we find that out, then I will not only do Havertz to Solanke, I will also do Saka to Johnson. Why would I do Johnson? Like, I was tempted by just Son, but if I do Johnson, then next week I can do Diaz to Palmer. So that would be the thinking, that I would just basically free up that money for Palmer already next week, and I would just get done with it. And I don't mind going for a Johnson this week as well, because you get that double up against West Ham, which is a good fixture. Let's say there's a scenario where Saka is fine, or there's no news, so I'm still on the Havertz to Solanke, but then there's also a hint that Slot basically hints that Gakpo has come back in better shape and has made a decision, and we're sort of, a lot of predictors are predicting a Gakpo start, then I might just also think about Diaz to Johnson. So I could use those 2 free transfers out of the 3 and get my Spurs double up. What would I do next week? I would probably then even be open to selling Johnson. It would be just a punt to get Johnson, because I can still do Palmer Trent and John 8 and Palmer next week with free transfers. So that's the agree of having a third, which I will roll. I could still do that. I would leave the option of myself basically saying, maybe I can wait out on Palmer, just keep Johnson for 4 weeks. So at all points in all my transfers, I want to be able to get Palmer for free next week. And that's where I'm going with this, that I could do Diaz to Johnson and keep the option value open. Like next week, if Chelsea lose to Liverpool, maybe a lot of people will think, look, tougher games coming up against Arsenal again. We feel Chelsea will lose. What should I get? There's other opportunities, other bandwagons to jump on in the next 3 weeks. I could be open to that, because I am looking at a longer term structure that my team looks mostly okay. When you looked at my team, the transfers that I have in mind between now and Game Week 12 basically are Edison to Raya, Havertz to Solanke, Trent to 8 Nouri, and Palmer to So that would still leave me with 3 extra transfers between now and Game Week 12, something. And that something could involve Haaland out. That something could involve just accumulating transfers going into Game Week 12. But there are options. Okay, I would also do DCL to somebody like Cunha or a João Pedro. So that's where we are. And the final scenario is if Saka is confirmed out, and there's also a hint that Gakpo starts instead of Diaz, then I would basically do all 3 transfers that I've just talked about. I would have to Sankey, I would do Diaz to Johnson, and I would do Saka to Palmer. Why would I get Palmer a week early? Well, if Saka's confirmed out and Diaz is iffy, then why wait? Then I would just do it. So that's my thinking. I'll always try to play this one. And so if that happens, obviously, I'll keep the Discord updated. But this is where I am. So most likely Havertz to Solanke. Before I go, I did also shout out the Sleeper Champions League Pick'em. So these guys are running from next week, obviously, a Pick'em pool, and there are tons of prizes. But the ones that I really wanted to highlight is basically this Pick'em new league that they have got, and I will add the link below this video. And it's basically where the top 1, 2, or 3 of each pool, they share $1,000 worth prize every single match day. And the last match day prizes were PS5, Nintendo Switch, Apple AirPods, and that's what was given per pool. So it's just a nice way. Like, you're not putting in, there's no money involved. You don't have to do it. You just have to sign up and just pick your results. And I think that's a no-brainer. So if you can get involved, do that. But otherwise, if you like the stream, do like the stream. Take care. Best of luck in Game Week 8.